You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
For the community, by the community.
Hello and welcome back to Home Chat, your local show about home, house and real estate. My name is Katja Dunn with William Revis. I'm your host tonight. As you remember, last time, which was in January, we talked about lead and asbestos, how to recognize asbestos in mold, and especially how to take care of it. We invited Gene over to talk about it, and we invited him back today to talk a little bit about mold in our homes, how to prevent mold, and if we have mold in our house, how to get rid of mold. As usually, I would like to talk a little bit about the real estate market, give you talk about some statistic numbers. And before we get started with mold, let's see how the market has been doing in 2009 and 2010. Today we're going to compare numbers like homes sold in 2009 compared to 2010. But let's look at the big picture first. If we look back at the past 5 years, the market went through a big slam, didn't really do that well. And this was a difficult market nationwide. But if we look back, really, and we focus more on our local market, we realized that it really wasn't that bad at all. Market went down, definitely not as much as the market nationally. I have been in business with my business partner for the past 5 years, and we have been able to grow our business, and that indicates that there is a lot of business out there. People buy, people sell, and it indicates also a growing market. 2010 was amazingly busy. And now when I see how much work we are facing now in 2011, it indicates that the spring market will be quite busy too. So if you are considering listing or buying and have any questions, don't hesitate to call me. T2 from the West Hartford Community Television will plant in our contact informations, and we'll also be happy to give you our numbers. Let's look at the sold houses in 2009. In Avon, I'm going to start with Avon. Avon had about 188 sold properties, compared to with 2010, about 23 fewer homes sold, so 165. In Farmington, the opposite way. 2009, the market sold 187, and in 2010, 198. West Hartford sold fewer homes in 2010, only 601, compared to 2009, about 28 more, 629. And then in Simsbury, the market is not as busy in Simsbury. So in 2010, we sold about 218 homes, 2009, 212. At this point, we have active houses on the market in Avon, 124, Farmington, 134, West Hartford, 170, Simsbury, 94. West Hartford usually sells houses a little faster. Houses move faster. It's a more active market. People move more than when you look at the market in Avon, Farmington, and Simsbury. The average sales price in Avon is always a little higher, with $493K. Farmington with $472, Simsbury with $378K, and West Hartford with $345K. Okay. The square footage price in West Hartford is 168, Avon 160. And then Farmington, 173. And I think it's interesting when you look at the square footage price, let's say the average sales price in Avon is 493, but the price per square foot is really only 160. And then in West Hartford, the square footage price is 168, but the average sales price is 345. Now a few numbers. If you need more numbers from different towns, again, please feel free to call me. It's 860-214-6291. I'd be happy to run your numbers too, either from different towns or maybe from your neighborhood or your street or your own house. Today, I'm very excited to talk about mold. Mold, when you look at it, is really found everywhere. It has been always been around. Mold plays a vital role in our environment, actually to keep our environment clean. There is indoor mold and there's outdoor mold. Both mold types have natural predators. The outdoor predators mold for the outdoor would be light insects and birds. But what really is important is the indoor mold, and that's something we need to keep under control. And I'm so glad, Jean, to have you here again.
Thank you.
And that you're here to educate us and answer questions. And just tell us a little bit what your company does and what you do.
Well, our company is an environmental testing company, and we service pretty much all of Connecticut and into New York City, up into the Boston area and upstate New York. We do the environmental testing, lead, asbestos, mold, indoor air quality, and like we were expanding on mold because right now mold is the majority of what we are doing in our business. If you went back 10 years, we were doing very little bit of mold, but now it's growing daily. Some weeks it's 80 to 90% of what our business is doing mold testing.
Wow, it's mold testing.
Yes, so it's very widespread. Not just old houses, new houses, residential and commercial buildings. And
so it can happen.
It can happen anywhere.
Anywhere.
And like you said, it's been around for a very long time. And I actually have one little slide here, and this is a piece taken out of Leviticus, which is out of the scriptures. And it goes back a long time, and it basically says that if you have any dirty stones or timbers in your home, it has to be taken out and taken to a clean part out of the side of the house. So they were talking about removing it a long time ago. So this is not something that has just occurred in the last couple of years. What has happened in the last couple of years is there's been more headlines out there. There's been some insurance cases, and one of the TV shows on TV, on 60 Minutes with Dan Rather, they had a special on there, This Mold House, which ran several times. This particular case that I'm referring to is Ballard versus Farmers Insurance. There was a couple out of New York City, went to Texas and built this huge mansion, 7,000 to 8,000 square foot home, and they had a water leak on the second floor.
Oh dear.
And it went down through the home, and their insurance company basically said, okay, we'll take care of the carpets, and that's all we're going to do. Well, mold started growing in the home, and it basically took over the house, and the settlement was $32 million. And that was
$32 million.
Yes, that was because of health issues and the damage to the home. It was later appealed, and it was settled for $5 million. The house was demolished. It got so bad. So that's what has started a lot of the information that is out there.
So how fast can mold grow? When you say in such a big home, it's probably started, and what happened?
Once you get a material wet or damp, mold spores will start growing in 24 to 48 hours. So it is very fast. So if you do get something wet, you have to dry it out immediately. And that's the problem. If it sits for any period of time, it's going to start growing. I'm sure we've all opened up our refrigerators and saw the little dish in there that's been there for a couple of days, and it's got the mold growth on it. That's how quick it will start.
Yogurt, sour cream, always. You can't leave it in there for longer than a week.
You leave the bread in the container for long enough, and you'll see it out, and it's going to start, getting all brown. Because mold spores are all over there.
So what makes mold grow?
Well, You need a couple things.
Got it right here.
Right there. For mold to grow, you need two things. First, you need moisture,
Yes.
which could be high humidity, a flood, a leaky pipe, a fire where they pour a lot of water onto your home. And the other one is any cellulose material. Anything like sheetrock, dust, ceiling tiles, carpeting, anything in your home that is cellulose base, once it gets wet, will start a mold growth.
Is it like a like a nutrition for them? Is this something where they just feel very comfortable, good place to grow?
What mold will do is they will actually start eating the material. Mold spores, when it lands on a material and starts growing, will actually give off an enzyme. Those enzymes start breaking down the material. You may have seen in some basements where the sheetrock got all wet and the paper is starting to deteriorate.
Right.
Well, that's the mold that's actually deteriorating, eating through it. It's like rotting wood is basically a mold that's deteriorating the wood.
Is this right?
So when it gets on any particular one of these materials in your home, it's going to start damaging it. So it can, do a lot of damage to the structural material of a house.
So it's the enzyme.
Right,
What
the
kind
enzyme
of
is breaking
dissolves
it
the
down.
enzyme?
It's, I think I mentioned this in the last show, that the garbage that we send to the dump,
Right.
it's the mold that's eating the garbage, and that's why the dumps eventually will go down instead of coming up. It's mold that's eating it, and it's slowly sinking in.
So it has
So
something.
there's good and there's bad.
Exactly, because it has been around for
yes,
a long
yeah.
time, so it
Right.
must be around for a reason, I guess. Right?
Some of the other good molds are yeast we use for breads, for
Yes.
yogurts and cheese and all that. So penicillin we use for medications. So there's the good and the bad. So, yeah. So it can go either way. Once you do have a mold situation in a home, there are health effects. Mold is, it's like the flower. When you walk by a flower, those little pollen spores go out into the air. Mold is the same way. If you've got a mold growing on a surface, just by walking by it, the airflow will make those mold spores shoot out into the air, and now they're floating around in large quantities. You're talking millions and millions of mold spores. To have a few mold spores around the house is not bad because we're breathing it in all the time. It's when they really get concentrated like that.
May I ask you a question in between?
Yes.
I'm just thinking about my sourdough bread. The sourdough starter.
Yes.
There's no yeast in there. It's all natural. Is
Right.
that what the dough is basically picking out of the air?
When it gets moldy, yes.
Exactly. That
Yes.
makes the sourdough product start, right? Is this what it is?
Well, it's
or?
the yeast usually.
The natural
It's
yeast.
the natural yeast. But if you left that sitting on the counter for a couple of days, it's those mold spores that are floating around in the air that are now going to land on it.
Gotcha.
And they're going to start eating the material now.
Material. Gotcha. All right.
So, and like I say, there's mold spores floating around in every environment. So, you can, like I said, you can reach out like this and just grab 4 or 5 different types of mold spores. Yeah.
So we all have it in our
We
houses.
all have it
It's
in our
just-
home, yes.
So what can you do to, I mean, you can prevent it in certain
Yeah.
ways, right? You
Yes.
can minimize it, I guess.
Yeah, that's...
How do we do that?
That is the biggest object we come when somebody says, gee, I have mold in our home. Anybody go out there and point to a wall like this and say, yes, that's
Right.
mold.
I've seen it many times.
You see it many times in
Yeah.
basements. The thing is, if you've got a mold growing on a surface like this and it's becoming airborne, has it migrated through the rest of the house? Is it just associated with this one area here? If this wallboard is soaking wet, the mold spores are not typically going to fly out into the air. But once it starts drying out a little bit, now the mold spores can be released into the air, and that's where it can become a hazard.
Oh, I see. So if it's still wet, it means it's still working just on that
Right.
particular area.
Right. It's, as
Interesting,
this wallboard dries out, it's more easily dispersed into the air. And just by
see.
walking by it is enough. So if you were to go in there now and take a cloth now and try to wipe this off, to get rid of it, make it look nice, you're releasing millions and millions of different types of mold spores.